the probability of you then exercising is substantially higher than if you were like, I'm going to go for 4 times 45-minute walks every morning. If you engage someone to do it with, that's going to be really important. There even be your partner. And it doesn't need to be every session, but just get started, get walking, get moving, and feel a little bit confident about yourself.
Welcome to Your Second Act, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number. Hi, lovely people. Welcome back to another episode of Your Second Act. How often does that little voice in your head say, move your butt, you're putting on weight, you're lazy, look at yourself? Well, that was the narrative for years until I started training with today's guest, Dan, who some of you might recognize from my socials as the infamous Trainer Dan. I've always tried to stay active throughout my life, but let's be real, boredom, life, and honestly, just a lack of motivation often got in the way. And 9 years ago, a friend suggested I check out a local gym run by exercise physiologists. And here I am today. I'm still at it, and I can't believe that I've stuck with this form of training for so long. But it's truly transformed not just my physical appearance, but also my mindset. And it's become such a part of who I am that I honestly, which is crazy for me even to say, I can't imagine not going week after week. I was the type of person that would dread any form of exercise, but there's just something about the place that I go, the trainers that I train with, the people, the community, that has really changed the way I look at exercise. And I've learnt so much about the importance of weight training in midlife. And I've been wanting to do this episode for a while to discuss this topic, and who better to dive into it than with the other man in my life, which is Trainer Dan. And Dan has a gift for making fitness easy to understand and just breaks down the science-backed benefits for incorporating training into your life. So hopefully this conversation inspires you to rethink your relationship with exercise and motivates you to take that first step towards training in a way that truly supports your body and your mind. So it's really never too late to start, and the benefits are absolutely worth it. So let's dive into the episode with Dan. Hey, Dan, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
No worries. Thank you, Michelle.
I can't believe we've been on this fitness journey together for 9 years now. And honestly, that's the longest I've ever committed to any form of fitness. And before I started with you, sticking to a workout, well, I guess I lost a lot of interest and inspiration. I'd do it for a little while and then I would just get over it. But you really helped me feel stronger physically, but completely shifted my mindset about fitness. So today I thought it's time to pick your brain and talk about why the right kind of training is so important in midlife. Now, we live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about staying fit, eating well, and navigating the endless do's and don'ts. And honestly, it just becomes so overwhelming. And like me, many of us feel the same way. So, my goal in this episode is to simplify things for my listeners, like give them practical tips on why should we exercise? What's the benefit? Why do we do certain things for certain parts of our bodies? Because I think a lot of us go to gyms or do what we do without really having that understanding. And one thing I've benefited from coming to Envy is, like, you will tell me, you're lifting that weight because that's going to be great for your bone density, and then it makes me understand what the benefit is in the end. So I just really wanted to bring an expert like yourself on to, yeah, just talk about it and hopefully get women on board to train, because I've realized how beneficial it's been for me. So yeah, like what's your take on all of this?
Yeah, definitely. So exercise is really, really important. Through all of my research and obviously in the domain in this space, we know that eating is really important for us. Sleep is really important for us, but exercise is one of the other single most critical things that we can do for our overall health and well-being. And considering it targets so many areas, both physiologically, really important spiritually as well. People talk about that a lot, but it's really, really important for us. And it's something that we can do for ourselves that has a real big impact on our life. So exercise is absolutely key. And I think a lot, especially you were talking about your journey earlier, I think where exercise can get confusing is when it's not structured and when it's not thought out. So that's pretty key. I think traditionally people always talk about goals, hey, you've got to have a goal, you've got to have a goal, you got to do the Balmoral burn, or we're going to do the half marathon, or I want to lose 15 kilos. These are all performance-based goals, whereas certainly, as we're all learning now, that exercise can really target goals that are really health-based. So whether it be bone mineral density, whether it be reducing the risk of brain-related diseases, whether it be reducing the risk of cancer. The research is getting stronger and stronger as exercise is such an important intervention from a preventative measure, a management measure, and also a treatment measure as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying before, I hadn't realized the importance of it since, we started to train together. But I think it goes back to the fact that I think a lot of women in midlife, we find ourselves, we're putting on weight. Our body is changing. What maybe we used to do no longer serves us anymore as far as fitness is concerned. There's a lot of, for example, playing tennis. So many people get injuries from that. But they're just doing that one form of exercise and they're not incorporating, say, weight and resistance training, which now I realize how important it is. But there's that stupid myth that, my generation has grown up with cardio. You've got to run, you got to do this because that's what's going to keep you fit. That's what's going to make you lose weight. And when you were telling me what the statistics are, cardio compared to weight training, I was blown away. And I actually walked away thinking, thank God, because I bloody hate running. So yeah, can we talk a little bit about, those stupid myths that, we've been raised to believe?
one of the critical ones you're talking about is cardio versus resistance training. I'll make it clear from the very top. I promote the fact that everyone should be exercising. It doesn't matter how, right? But as we want to be strategic in what we do. And one of the big myths that I hear all the time is cardio, how I want to lose weight, or I want to manage my weight, or fit, I'm cardio fit, right? Cardio is important for your heart, your lungs, your blood vessels, oxygen uptake, right? But that's really all it's serving you. It will give you other benefits. It can give you the mental runner's high as well. That stuff is really, really good. But when we're talking bang for buck exercise, and you say, hey, I've got 3 1-hour sessions in my week that I'm going to exercise and I want to maximize my benefit, bang for buck resistance training is definitely going to be the winner there. It targets so many parts of our body, our anatomy, our metabolism, right? It's going to be a far better output. And people might go, okay, well, give me some real specifics. If you go for a resistance based session, now I'm not saying we're training so we're putting on muscle tissue. We don't want to turn into Arnie. I get that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about resistance training as in the exercise is stressful, right? It's challenging and our muscles have to create forceful contractions. So we're working against a resistance that is stressful, but it doesn't need to be peak level like you're flipping over a car. And when we start doing training like that, your muscles are going to respond. Your connective tissue are going to respond. Your brain has to work really hard to create those forceful neuromuscular contractions, right? We are going to have an impact on how our oxygen saturation at the muscle level is occurring. You will get a little bit of a cardio benefit as well. You'll improve your anaerobic threshold. There are many different areas that you're going to improve, which is going to be overall very helpful for your body as compared with cardio. Whereas, yes, it's going to be great per se for those typical areas I discussed before, but long lasting after your session, Michelle, like your body's working hard, sometimes 48 hours after to recover from that session. After a cardio session, within an hour, like even within 10 minutes, most of the work is done. The recovery is minimal, right? But I mean, you've been sore for sometimes we do some new movements. You could be sore for 24, 48 hours, not crippling sore, but sore. And your body's just adapting to those changes. And that length in recovery is really important. It requires a much higher caloric demand. So when you're talking bang for buck, resistance training is going to be a better outcome for you than cardiovascular. But I also will be clear in saying I'm not saying that cardio is not a good form of exercise. It certainly is a great form of exercise, but that's to debunk the myth. If you had to go, I just got to do cardio, 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 cardio. No, get resistance sessions in there. They're going to be more valuable. So it'd be great if someone could do 2 to 3 resistance sessions a week. Play tennis once a week and then go for a walk with friends, of around about 60 minutes. I mean, for middle-aged women, I know your podcast targets that area, and that would be really beneficial, really, really beneficial. The research is clear. 3 to 4 sessions of stressful and forceful structured exercise per week is the gold standard, the gold standard. So if we can at least have 2 resistance, maybe 3, a tennis or a kayak or a light jog, and then like a walk with friends or family or the dog, perfect.
Okay, so by doing that, let's talk about what are the long term benefits of starting this type of training?
There are a lot. There are a lot. So I'll come back to like resistance training has to be determined by a forceful contraction. We need to stimulate the body. And when we create a forceful contraction, it requires the brain to send an impulse down to, let's say I was going to do, for instance, a bicep curl. The brain's got to send an impulse that's reflective of the weight. If the weight is 1 kilo, it's only going to be a very small impulse. The brain creates that small impulse. It travels slowly down the nervous system to the arm, and then we have that contraction, all right? But if it's forceful, right, let's say we choose a 6 kilo, and yeah, we have to work to get to our 12 reps, right? And it is straining. We're having to send big impulses from our brain. So that sends a big impulse that shoots fast down our nervous system. It then gets to my arm, right? We get that neuromuscular. So we have an electric signal that turns into an action potential, which is what a muscle contraction is. You have that contraction. And then, because it's forceful, your muscles are wrenching on your bones, right, to create that movement, right? So, and then obviously we release, right? The muscle then has a metabolic waste component because you've created energy, you've bang created that contraction, and now you've got metabolic waste, right? That is essentially what 1 rep is doing to you. And where that's really helpful is our brain. Our brain, every time it sends a strong and forceful response, that's really good for your brain. I can't stress that enough. It's phenomenal for your brain. It's really, really, really important. It lowers the risk of brain related diseases. It has shown to have a delayed impact on Alzheimer's, on dementia, and a really good form of grey matter depletion that naturally happens over time, really maintaining what we have. So it's really important from the brain. From a nervous system perspective, it's really important. We use this term, use it or lose it, a lot. You've probably heard it a lot in the fitness industry. This could never be more true for our nervous system. So if we use those contraction pathways regularly, consistently, 48 weeks of the year, we might go away on holidays, but we're using it regularly. Well, what happens is our brain puts myelin sheath, thicker forms of myelin sheath, which is conductivity around our nerves, right? And that makes the impulses smooth. It makes them fast. It makes them regular. This is a really important thing for, yes, our nervous system, but reactions, coordinations, reduction of slips, trips, and falls. And it's imperatively important for mobility, right? Really important for mobility because we're using those areas a lot. Your nervous system will be a lot more responsive to the movement that you give it. So nervous system wise, we've been really beneficial for our nervous system. Then we talk about at the muscle size. A lot of people start banking into start perking up the interest of going, yeah, I like leaner muscle tissue. You will get more dense muscle. More dense muscle, really important. We talk about lean muscle tissue or lean muscle mass. It's really important. It helps also regulate our hormones, right? Really helps balance and regulate our metabolism. So let's say someone's diet starts to relax just for a week or two as they go on holidays. Lean muscle tissue helps your body to make sure that we can minimize such erratic peaks and troughs and stuff like that. It's a stronger engine. And then the connective tissue, we're talking about the tendons and ligaments, right? They're going to be stronger. right? The reduction in when you're playing tennis, you tear a ligament, tear a tendon. Often what I get in the clinic is often people go for a walk and suddenly, that hip is really hurting. I'm usually okay, but we talk about tendonitis, we talk about inflammation at a certain joint. By regular resistance training, we reduce that risk factor, and then also the bone wrenching for bone mineral density. So I've given quite a bit of a long anatomical component of this is what doing a forceful contraction requires from the body, and all these sectors are going to improve. Now, if I flip that onto, let's say, cardio or some submaximal, let's say, reformer Pilates or yoga, intent exercises that are lower intensity don't require such forceful contractions, you're not going to get such a stimulated impulse, and those improvements are going to be rapidly reduced, right? Stressful, forceful contractions will give you all those health benefits. Those are the key areas. Yeah.
We've talked about this in the clinic over the past few years, how you see people that come to you from a result of maybe training incorrectly. They've gone to gyms that say like Orange Theory, where you just go crazy. It's on a timer. You have to do so much, and then they find that they've got injury because of it, because it's not tailor made to you. So I think a question I wanted to ask is, for women that want to start this type of training, should they look at when they're finding a trainer? Because trainer is a very loose term, isn't it? Like, there are a lot of trainers out there, but it's trying to find the right type of trainer as well. Because as we get older, we're going to be more inclined to injure ourselves more so than someone who's in their 20s or their 30s. So, yeah, I've really noticed that because you guys are actual exercise scientists, physiologists, you understand the body. It's very different than going to say somewhere like Fitness First, that you might find someone who's done a quick training course on how to be a trainer.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Like, the first thing I would really suggest is, let's say someone hasn't really conducted any resistance training before. Gyms are intimidating, right? They want often there's a call to action, whether that be a low bone mineral density scan or the hip is really starting to ache, just walking the dog. Really want to go, okay, I want to do this, but I don't have the confidence, I don't have the experience, and I want someone to guide me and take me step by step. And I don't want to just walk in and be thrashed with heavy exercises and being yelled at. I would definitely say go and research for an exercise physiologist or an exercise scientist. This means that they have to have done university qualifications to gain these titles. An exercise physiologist is a clinical exercise practitioner that can deal with anyone from any background, whether it be illness, injury. An exercise scientist is probably someone who is a little bit more applied. And what that means is someone who might be like wanting more structured from a goal setting perspective of, hey, I'd like to run a half marathon, or I need to get stronger for my ski trip, or bits or pieces. So you have more of a clinician, as in, hi, Dan, I'm about to go through some cancer treatment and I really need some structure. I'd use the exercise physiologist down the clinician side, clinical side, or go more applied depending on where it is, what is your call to action. But I would definitely use either those exercise physiologists or exercise sports scientists because they have the university degree. I'm not bagging personal trainers. There are phenomenal ones out there, but I'm just saying the probability of you meeting someone that is understanding where you're at and that progressive overload program that we need to take is really important. Specifically for you, Michelle, when I first met you, you were in that boat of, I need to exercise, I jump around here and there, but also like, I need to be like taking a longer journey that I don't really know how to do, but I need to build myself up. And that's absolute key. That's absolute key. We need to start at a base platform. Your trainer really needs to understand you. What's really important, and what I do is I don't like anyone to come in and be absolutely shattered in those opening month or 8 weeks of training, because that's not what it's about. It's about laying those platforms that are really important. But yeah, as you were saying though, how do I go about finding someone? There is, our governing body is called ESSA, or Exercise Sports Science Australia, and they have an online directory there as well. So you can just punch in your postcode, and it will give you a list of all registered practitioners in the area. That will definitely be my first direction of where to go. And then secondly, don't feel pressured to go with anyone that you might not have a connection with. I think finding a connection with someone as a trainer it is really important, and someone that you're going to trust. So you might go do an initial consultation over at this individual, and if you're not grabbing the vibe, try a consultation with another individual until you kind of find your crew, you know what I mean? Often, I also have a lot of younger individuals that go to like CrossFit's really important, and what's called HIIT, high intensity interval training facilities. They're often done in, industrial areas, and they go and they smash themselves from day one, and then I get the injuries. And then we really have to shift things. And I see it through all age groups that unfortunately, the risk of injury with exercise comes from the unstructured nature, and then also when it's not personalized for the individual. So keep that in mind as well. I know group fitness classes are cheaper, but sometimes it's better off paying quality to have that one on one or small group sessions where things can really be tailored towards you or you can modify.
Yeah, because then what happens, you get injured, you still have to pay the money to go and see a physio or a chiro in order to fix it. So, yeah, get it right from the start. And I remember a couple of years ago, my daughter said, "Oh, mum, come to this group fitness session with me." And I went, and I remember telling you, I died. I basically died. I thought, I am so unfit. They were running. And then for the next week, I paid for it. I had so much pain throughout my body, and I just thought, wow, it just made me realize, no, it's just not for me. I do wonder sometimes the people that can maintain that type of physical activity, like, what is it? Do you think it's an age thing, or do you think it's just someone who has consistently done that throughout their life?
To be honest, it's targeted towards young people because the young body is very forgiving. The young body is very forgiving. You see it in also work-life balance. I mean, young people can absolutely thrash their bodies with 2 or 3 jobs, uni, right, and 4 hours sleep plus partying here and there, and they just keep on going, going, going. But when I think about those places, like the longevity of it is low. The other part is classically they don't have clientele that stick with them for 5, 6, 7 years where they're training 48, 45 weeks of the year. They'll go through periods and stuff like that. It's intense and they work very hard at their marketing, making sure it's quite a vibe, it's quite a place to be seen and this and that, which don't get me wrong, all great. I'd rather people be exercising. That's the main thing, but it needs to be strategic. And you were mentioning, you've been training with me a long time and it's strategic. You don't walk out of here sometimes barely being able to walk. That's not what resistance training is about. It never needs to be like that. Resistance training, I was talking about, forceful, it needs to be stressful, but it is also managed, right? We don't need to be almost breaking our bones and our muscles for us to get a benefit. And looking at the whole approach of training as well, mobility, strength training, posture, that's a lot. I mean, Michelle, we've been working with posture for a long time and consistently. That's why you have good posture, right? Whereas when we have on the other side, where you're just thrashing yourself, there's none of this process, none of this is really brought into mind. Like a little cool down and a bit of a stretch at the end of the session is not the balance that you need there. So, but yeah, I think it comes down to young bodies can tolerate a fair bit of high intensity, almost like piercing training and still be okay. But I mean, early 30s, mid 30s, it starts to really bite back. It starts to really bite back. And once we certainly get to 40 years, and onwards, we got to be really strategic about what we're doing because majority of us are very, very busy. We don't have all this spare time up our sleeve. So we want to make sure we're getting a lot of value health wise from the 4 to 5 hours we invest into our exercise per week.
So, I'm in my 50s now, and I'm starting to think more about, well, be concerned about osteoporosis, which, is a big part of a lot of women in midlife. We have this issue, bone density, all of that. So I'm assuming you get women who come into the clinic who have osteoporosis. Can you just talk me through that? Like, have you seen the benefits that someone who's come in with that and has trained with you, what's happened to their bodies?
The classic thing, someone comes, had bone mineral density scan, I'm osteopenic, I'm osteoporotic or whatever the case may be from that scan. And the most important thing for us is to make sure that we put stress on their bones in a way that is appropriate. And if we put that stress on the bones in an appropriate manner over a consistent period of time, that is going to be the best intervention for reducing the degradation of their bone tissue. And so, yeah, like how we go about it is before we can load someone up with resistance, we need to make sure that they're balanced, right? We need to make sure before I get them squatting, I need to make sure both hips are working evenly so we can create that good lift, right? Pressure is weight, right? And our body will respond from a bone perspective really well to that pressure. That pressure has got to be stressful and forceful, but it doesn't need to be so much that, you're not back squatting 80 kilos just to get stronger bones, right? And it's also got to be continuous. It can't just be 3 months and then until the next scan, or 6 months or 12 months kind of thing. It will need to be continuous, strategic, and it needs to be forceful. Like, for instance, a leg press. This is probably one of the most common things that I wouldn't say that word treat, but we fight against in here. You were trained with so many individuals that I've helped out, but in particular, this one woman where things were going drastically when I met her, and she is a smaller individual, a lighter individual, and so we had to probably work a little bit harder on the back end to be really strategic because the risk of fracture was very high, and she's had such a big improvement. And the leg press has probably been the singular most activity that we've done consistently. Now, it's been 9 years that I've been training her, and her bones are now officially in no risk category. It's been a phenomenal turnaround, and it's certainly not one that we shouldn't expect all the time. But one of the big things is slowing down the degradation. And almost everyone I meet, once they start, not only do they slow down, but we'll have an uptake, we'll have an improvement, right? And then we will look to keep either that small rate of improvement or just manage that so we don't have a reduction. There's an interesting saying, like, obese people do not have osteoporosis or any bone-related diseases, and that's because they've got a strong force that they need to carry around with them all the time. We just need to reflect that. We just need to reflect that kind of resistance. Pretend that you're overweight for 4 hours a day, you know what I mean? In our sessions or 3 sessions or whatever. And the other thing is people so weight bearing, everyone knows weight bearing is important. Yeah, but it's more than just weight bearing. It's how you strike your contractions. You can have a more beneficial reaction from your bones by just tempoing your contractions. So this is why having an exercise professional who knows what they're doing, you get a lot more bang for your buck for the sessions and the work that you do. That's going to be a typical one. And then also jumping. People talk about jumping or stomping, and that also can be very important. But what I don't like seeing is people who self-prescribe this stuff, and then we end up with more issues than good when people are jumping and skipping like straight into it without building a platform or anything like that, because that can probably flip you on the other side of increasing the risk of fractures unless we do it in a strategic manner. So yeah. So from a bone mineral density perspective, resistance training is the key. I mean, the research is overwhelming. Number one intervention strategy is exercise. Number two will be nutrition/infusion as the second most. And three will be looking at more of a holistic approach. There could be some supplementation as well involved, but the best is all three. The best is all three, but we will obviously need to go speak to your GP with regards to option 2 and 3. But exercise, absolutely critical. Absolutely critical.
And also, just to touch on lightly on mental health, I mean, how it definitely works hand in hand because, we're going at this stage of life, we're going through a lot of changes in our bodies, and a lot of women find themselves depressed. So I personally feel having a routine, it's something that I keep myself accountable for and I look forward to because you might not want to go, but once you go and you do a session, you always walk away feeling so much better about yourself. It's just getting your ass to the gym or to whatever it is that you're doing. And it's that accountability. And I know there'll be a lot of women listening to this thinking, I really don't do much. So, like, how can we inspire them? Like, how can they start? Just something little. Like, what advice would you give them?
Specifically with the question, what advice can I give someone who's like, honestly, I'm in a sedentary position and I want to start, but gyms and whatnot seem intimidating and whatnot, but I want to just get going, right? The most important thing to do is try and engage someone with you first and foremost, right? So even if that's a friend to go for a walk with, if that's the first step, but that will help with keeping you accountable. Almost daily, there'll be clients who are like, they come in, they're definitely not motivated to get going, right? But they owe it to me. They booked in with me. They owe it to me to come in. They've made a commitment and they know they need to do it. So in they come, right? Within 2, 3 minutes, once we get things moving and whatnot, we're into it. And that's where even if you don't want to, you meet with your friend, you meet down at Balmoral and you go for the walk. Within a few moments, even just seeing the individual, we know through research, suddenly increases your intrinsic motivation, right? And suddenly you're already engaging with the other individual, even just with the sight of them. The probability of you then exercising is substantially higher than if you were like, I'm going to go for 4 times 40-minute, 45-minute walks every morning. If you engage someone to do it with, that's going to be really important. So from a start point, definitely just make sure you get someone on track with you, whether it even be your partner. And it doesn't need to be every session that you want to do, but just get started, get walking, get moving, and feel a little bit confident about yourself. I can't recommend a trainer enough because we're all the answers and we can make things very efficient for you and we can cut out the fluff and we can put in all the important facts that you kind of need and set you up in a structure. And even if you're like, "Oh, I don't want it to be so structured," I mean, from the back end, we can do all that stuff. I think I tell a lot of clients is just rock up, just make the booking, rock up. I do everything else. I do all the programming, making sure the posture is good, making sure the technique is good, and my bone's going to be stronger. My metabolism, how's that going to be going? This is good for my mental health. Just rock up, and I'll manage everything else. And that's what a lot of outsourcing. You might have a gardener, you might have an accountant and stuff like that. You trust these professionals, and we're just one of the individuals. Yeah, just walk up, and allow that professional to guide you through and stuff. And I think, Michelle, 95% of our conversations in the clinic have nothing to do with exercise, right? You've been able to engage the community that's around you, that's training in here at the same time. And, oh, how's your son go with the HSC? How's your daughter engagement
Great
going? All this
community.
stuff. Yeah, we have created a great community, but that's the other thing that exercise can really do. And, you spoke about the mental health component and stuff like that. And then you start listening and you start hearing other people, and everyone's got a story. One thing I would really love is a magic wand where people are really happy with how they are, right? But people always reflect backwards and they feel that they're not as thin, they're not as muscular, my arms are more flabby, like I put on more weight and bits and pieces. But I get that at every age group. Every age group, I get that. I was more mobile. I was able to play more golf or tennis, or used to be able to walk and the hip not hurt. And we kind of get that at all. I'd love to have a wand where people go, I'm really happy with where I am right now because I'm working well, I'm doing all the right things, and I've got a lot of reward, right? I got a lot of reward. A lot of people look in the mirror and they don't feel that they get that reward. But from a metabolism perspective, from a body perspective, from a physiology perspective, there's so much reward. There's so much reward when we do this stuff. Getting started and then seeking out a professional to just really help you out is going to be really beneficial to get started. And like, I know maybe in the background, you can see weights like that can also be intimidating and threatening. But when you have someone guiding you through it, this stuff is easy. These are nothing more than a tool to create stress, and stress is managed by us and intensity and reps. And yeah, I don't want anyone to be fearful of it.
Absolutely. I agree. And well, it's clearly working because after 9 years, I still come back every week. So, yeah. Like someone pointed out, it's like book club with weights. I loved that. I thought that was perfect. It's a great community. It's like you guys are great. I walk away always feeling energized, which for my mental health is so important. And yeah, I'm always encouraging friends who aren't doing as much to really start looking into it because we don't want to have those problems. I don't want to have in 10 years' time in my 60s that I'm starting to fall or I've got issues with my bones, arthritis, all those things. If I can try and do stuff now to put it in the bank to prevent that from happening or to just have a longer life where I'm more independent, 100%. Yeah, which I didn't realize this say 10 years ago. But yeah, I'm realizing the importance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you're ever going to get like specifically for you, Michelle, I don't think you're ever going to realize the reward that you've got for the work that you've done over this almost decade journey. You don't know, like the holiday you just had, like you could have tripped on something. And if you weren't training, if you're sedentary, you might have fallen and fractured yourself. But you've done that BOSU work, the stability work for a long period of time. We consistently keep it up and you caught yourself, right? And then you continue with your conversation, like, oh, I almost fell kind of thing, and off you go. Whereas Michelle, maybe who would have been sedentary, would have had the fracture. Like you'll never know where you could have been if exercise wasn't a part of it, and stuff like that. But also, like the other thing is, we don't know, but exercise is so important. Also, from a prevention of cancers, people don't realize this research is coming along so rapidly now that yeah, you could be laying the platform down where your body is still fighting. Like every day, we're fighting off thousands of cancerous cells with our suicide cells, and we're breaking that down. But you don't know, like maybe sedentary Michelle, something could have caught on and stuck to an organ or something like that. But because you're, you know, the resistance training, it has an impact on from the blood flow to the hormones to your immune system and all that stuff. You don't know the benefits. You truly can't see the benefit because you don't know where you could have been. But that's why I always say, you just do the work, right? Make it a part of your life. And then you've always done it. You can't look back and go, well, maybe if I would have changed this risk factor or this risk factor, but you're doing it and it's got so much big benefit. So, you know, you're a great example of consistency and persistence, rocking up, getting it done. As I said, there's so much about your body that is so positive, so positive. And I know we've had conversations where you're like, oh, Dan, this has suddenly appeared on my body and aesthetically I don't. But, when we look at the huge picture on this stuff, and also changes in your hormones have been probably really well balanced with the resistance training that you've done, whereas it could have been much higher peaks and troughs, which would have created different challenges and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing what our body can do with that constant stimulation, that regular stimulation. But sadly, we never get to actually see it. Like, unless, you could have a magic mirror or something like that, you don't know the true benefits of it. So, yeah.
Well, because you've just given me a wonderful rap about the fact that I'm amazing. I want to know why my name doesn't appear on the Envy Warrior of the Month board month after month. I think I got it. So, for the listeners who don't understand what I'm saying, is Dan every month has two clients. If they've worked really hard or whatever it is, they've achieved a goal, they get their name put on the Envy Warrior of the Month board. I had it once, probably 8 years ago, and month after month, I look at the email and my name is never there. So what else do I really have to do, Dan?
Yeah, listen, there's a long structure of criteria to it. For this award, there's a board, the board's gotta meet, we're all gotta vote and stuff like that. But the challenge for me, it's funny when we opened up the business, created this award because I wanted there to be an extrinsic motivation to help people. I had no idea it was gonna be this political. It is, yeah, it is a fiercely topic, but the crux of it is I really wanna reward people who have or really excelled at something particular that they thought wasn't quite possible. But every week, Michelle, I'm doing 220 sessions a week, right? And every one of those individuals I could give the award to, right? Every one of those clients I could give the award to for rocking up and getting the work done. But also that's my level of expectation. I have that expectation from myself that I make sure when clients rock up, they're getting value for what they're coming here to do. As I said, just rock up and I'll sort everything out. I want everyone, otherwise, I don't feel like I'm doing my job right, right? So just rock up and let me guide you and lift you and maintain you and build those structures and stuff like that. But yeah, specifically that award is for things that are really where people have really excelled. And often that can be over a period of time. You've seen the winners we have over month after month. There are some exceptional results that are achieved in here at times. But then there are also some really subtle results that really need to be rewarded as well. So there's ebbs and flows throughout the year.
That's okay. I forgive you. I'll get back there one day. Well, Dan, thank you so much. And for people in the Sydney area who are interested in connecting with Dan, I will put your details in the show notes. They can reach out to you if they want more information. Like I said, it's an amazing clinic. I've been going for a long time and Just love it. I really look forward to coming every single week. So yeah, but I like to end my episodes with the same question. Now, I love a quote, and I wanted to know, is there a quote that has stayed with you throughout your life that you'd like to share with us?
So probably the quote would be, hard work always pays off. I can't stress this enough. A little bit of history for me. I used to, when I finished high school, I did my apprenticeship as a chef. That's pretty rough industry. And at the time period that I did it, it was like I worked heavy hours and stuff like that. But, you know, hard work always pays off, and that really created a nice launch pad for me moving forward. And then I opened up my own business. I put myself through risks all the time, and I always just knew if I did the hard work, it would benefit. So from a private perspective, that's what sticks with me. I know it's also, hey, exercise wise, yeah, hard work does always pay off exercise wise as well. When it's uncomfortable and bits and pieces. But the thing that sticks with me, yeah, hard work, because nothing ever comes free, right? You don't deserve it unless you worked for it, and that's it. You don't always wanna think about all the handouts or anything like that that may have come your way to get you to that point. It's like, "No, I've been the driver, I've been the engine, and I've got myself here," and I think that's really fulfilling. So that's what sticks with me. Hard work always pays off.
Love it. Yes, I completely agree. Awesome. Well, thanks, Dan. Love this chat, and I will see you back in the gym tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow morning, huh? Big one.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.